and eastern England overnight. Mostly any snow accumulation is over hills, but patchy small amounts at lower levels, and the main hazard, of course, first thing Tuesday will be ice, because it's going to be a cold start out there, but a bright start for many, having seen the showers clear earlier in the night and widespread clear skies develop. Blue skies are expected first thing across many parts of the UK, especially central parts of England into Wales, Northern Ireland, central and western Scotland, cloud-free skies, but a chill in the air. Then we've got further sleet and snow showers coming into the northeast of Scotland, but these are easing through the day. Eastern England, a blustery start with some very strong winds first thing. They tend to moderate by the time we get to the afternoon, and then for many it's just a dry and bright day. But it will turn cloudy towards the southwest later on. 7 Celsius here, 4 or 5 further north and east. When you factor in the strong wind, it's going to feel more like 0 or 1 degree. Now, the cloudier skies in the southwest will bring an area of rain in overnight, and that's going to spill into Northern Ireland, parts of South Wales and the southern part of England by Wednesday afternoon. Some heavy rain eventually, and that's going to turn to snow over the hills in the south, I think, on Wednesday night into Thursday. Thursday turns drier with plenty of sunshine for many.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to see how you could win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, we could be sorting out your summer with an incredible holiday for 2 worth £10,000, courtesy of Riviera Travel. You'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
They've caved, they've collapsed. It's a victory for reform, but more importantly, it's a victory for democracy in this country. We are delighted.
Another day, another U-turn from an embattled Prime Minister in office but not in power. Today, the Reverend Starmer was forced to abandon his unlawful plans to cancel local elections for 4.6 million voters in 30 areas following legal advice 3 days before reform's challenge in court. The government will now pay reform's legal costs. But why did it take an opposition party taking the government to court to reverse this dictatorial decision? Also tonight, Labour is mired in sleaze once again as the group bankrolling Keir Starmer's leadership is accused of orchestrating a smear campaign against journalists investigating its funding when it was led by his political ally, now Cabinet Office Minister Josh Simons. Meanwhile, the government has unveiled more powers to regulate the internet in the name of protecting children. Is Labour showing its proclivity for totalitarian politics and ruling by decree? And
mobile phones to gather vital intelligence to disrupt people smugglers. Those who plan small boat crossings face up to 5 years behind bars.
small boat migrants who had their telephones seized on arrival have now been awarded thousands in compensation after judges ruled the policy unlawful, just weeks after the Home Secretary announced powers to do so. More than £210,000 has already been paid out, with more claims ahead. When will the government put border control ahead of lefty judges? Plus,
in Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
the Trump administration may give refugee status to a man who burned a Quran in London if he loses his High Court appeal later this week. After his case led to international concern over free speech in Britain, is President Trump acting on principle or simply mobbing up His Majesty's government? And is 56 too old for fashion? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most penetratingly percipient panel, the former Conservative MP and Minister, Lord Redwood, and the former Labour MP, Stephen Pound. As always, let me know what you think, mailmog at gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Sophia Hill.
Jacob, thank you. Very good evening. It's just gone 8 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Top story, the government has abandoned plans to delay local elections in 30 council areas after receiving fresh legal advice warning that the move would be unlawful. Labour had proposed cancelling votes affecting more than 4.5 million people to create capacity for a major restructuring of English local government. This news marks the 14th U-turn by the government. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage spoke to GB News earlier and praised the announcement after originally plotting legal action.
The government obviously knew they were going to lose. The boss of the Electoral Commission said what they'd done was illegal. Clearly, the government's own lawyers believed they'd acted illegally, and so they caved in, and 4.6 million people, or should I say 4.6 million council taxpayers, because that to me is the key point, will now get the vote. So yes, it's a legal victory, it's a victory for our party, but above all, it's a victory for freedom and democracy.
All AI chatbots must be held to account. That's the message from the Prime Minister after the Grok chatbot was found to have generated non-consensual sexualised images. Sir Keir Starmer says that the government went into battle with the platform and won after the feature was removed, but warns that action must now go further, insisting that no platform gets a free pass. The comments come as ministers set out wider plans to toughen online safety rules, including limiting children's contact with chatbots, blocking VPN access to harmful content and consulting on tougher restrictions on social media. However, critics say that these proposals still do not go far enough. More than 70 migrants who have crossed the Channel have been awarded compensation, totalling around £500,000 after their mobile phones were seized, in a case that's now sparking a political row. High Court judges ruled the blanket policy of confiscating phones back in 2020 as unlawful and a breach of privacy rights. So far, dozens of claimants have received payouts, with more cases still to be settled, raising fears that the total bill could climb into the millions. Critics have branded the payment a farce and a waste of the taxpayers' money. But the government says that the compensation relates to a policy introduced by the previous administration, which has since been replaced with new laws. And breaking this evening, Oscar-winning actor Robert Duvall has died at the age of 95. His wife, Luciana, said that the star of The Godfather and Apocalypse Now passed away peacefully at home, surrounded by love. Over a career spanning 6 decades, Duvall earned 7 Academy Award nominations, winning Best Actor for Tender Mercies, and became one of Hollywood's most respected performers. Unforgettable as Tom Hagen in The Godfather for delivering the iconic line, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in an hour, but now it's back to Jacob.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. The government is in absolute disarray, muddle, confusion. As it turns out, it doesn't really know much law. Let's have a look at what they had to say about getting rid of elections.
I have decided to bring forward legislation to postpone 29 elections. This means of the 136 local elections across England that were scheduled for May, the vast majority will go ahead as planned. In areas where elections are postponed, existing councillors will have their terms extended for a short period.
So he decided this, and then he defended it, telling our very own Christopher Hope that he was not denying democracy.
And it's not denying democracy. You know, I believe strongly.
That's what critics say, though. They say it is.
Of course they do, but they're wrong. They're wrong. It's speeding up elections to the new councils that will replace the councils that are being closed down. And I think that is sensible. We're looking at councils that will be there for the long term.
So we were looking at councils that were going to be there for the long term, and it wasn't denying democracy, but unfortunately it was denying democracy, as the head of the Election Commission seemed to indicate, and also turned out to be against the law. So today, the Secretary of State has decided to withdraw his decision to postpone the council elections of 30 local councils due to take place in May 2026 in light of recent legal advice. And this matters because occasionally there are arguable things that the government gets one side of a legal argument or another, and they could go one way or another. But this is getting the law wrong on cancelling elections for 4.6 million people. And how did it happen? Well, it happened because Nigel Farage took a case against the government and won. And he's going to get his money back. So the Secretary of State goes on to say the Secretary of State will seek to agree an order with the claimant, that is reform, in the light of this announcement, disposing of the claim, and will agree to pay the claimant's cost of these proceedings. This is a complete climb down. It's very rare that you get the government so clearly bang to rights. And Nigel Farage was understandably quite chuffed. Chuffed a mongo, as you might say. Let's have a look at him.
The government obviously knew they were going to lose. The boss of the Electoral Commission said what they'd done was illegal. Clearly, the government's own lawyers believed they'd acted illegally, and so they caved in, and 4.6 million people, or should I say 4.6 million council taxpayers, because that, to me, is the key point, will now get the vote. So, yes, it's a legal victory. It's a victory for our party, but above all, it's a victory for freedom and democracy.
It really does matter because the government is unpopular. It was facing disaster in these elections, and it used its reorganisation, which was a voluntary choice of the government, it didn't have to happen, as an excuse to cancel elections and take away votes. And this has an effect because if governments lose local elections, by-elections, elections in Scotland and in Wales, it puts pressure on them to do different things, to change their policy, possibly to change their leader. And it's how democracy evolves and ensures that the country, that the government keeps in touch with what voters want. If you can just cancel them, where do you stop? And 4.6 million votes, or potential votes, is a very significant proportion of the country. Previously, it's been done in small areas, or when there was a big issue. It's been done for war, it was done for COVID. But this was just for political convenience, and this government's been caught out. And I'm afraid it's part of a trend. This government doesn't like scrutiny. It runs away from it. It fears voters because it never got a mandate in the first place. And although we have, and I think it's the right system, a first-past-the-post system, a government that only has 33% of popular support when it wins, even if it has a big majority, doesn't have the mandate to go with the majority that legitimise it making difficult choices. And that's why you have a government in office but not in power, a Prime Minister who clings on when he is incapable, incompetent, unable to fulfil the role that he has, and he does it because his opponents can't get their act together to get rid of him. They wish to wound, but they will not kill. They don't wish to take the final step to push him out. And so the country drifts. Nothing happens. His unpopularity grows, and we have to put up with this for another 3.5 years. They don't like democracy. They're frightened of it. They tried to stop it. Well done, Nigel Farage. Well done, Kevin Padenauck, who also wanted these elections to go ahead. A pox on those councillors who voted to cancel elections, who really shouldn't have done so. And if they're Conservatives, they should hang their heads in shame, because this case has shown that democracy really ought to go ahead, and Conservatives who went along with this socialist nostrum should not have done so. As always, let me know what you think, mailmog at gbnews.com, but I'm now joined by the editorial director, Guido Fawkes, and formerly of this channel, Adam Cherry, and, of course, my most penetratingly percipient panel, Lord Redwood and Stephen Pound. Adam, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Guido's been working on this for some time, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You must also feel a sense of satisfaction today.
We do, yeah. I mean, it's not... today is I think the 50, depending on how you count it, it's the 15th U-turn from this government, from Keir Starmer in the last 18 months. And what's extraordinary about it is, as you said in your introduction there, they're sort of salami slicing, or even in some cases in quite big ways, making these authoritarian adjustments to the system to benefit themselves. It was only today they were talking about social media and cracking down on it before this 15th U-turn landed on our laps. And now we're discussing this one. It's 4.6 million people who were disenfranchised by this.
But this, in a way, is worse than a U-turn. Yeah. Because they were breaking the law.
Yeah.
And governments, of course, lose judicial reviews, but that's when they think they've got an arguable case, that they go through the case, they then find that they've got some point wrong. When you pull out 3 days before the court case, it means your lawyers are telling you you do not have an arguable case.
Correct.
And that's really very serious. It raises questions about legal advice, raises questions about the Attorney General's competence. Yeah. It's pretty fundamental.
Well, and crucially also the Housing Secretary, Steve Reid, he wasn't in situ when this was first introduced. Actually, that was the former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. Nonetheless, he's going to have to carry the can for this. And in Starmer's government, I'm afraid someone always carries a can whose name isn't Keir Starmer. So his head is now, he's now in the firing line for this decision, and we're hearing that chatter across Whitehall this evening, so it'll be interesting to see if he survives this. But you're right, it looked like they were going to lose, and as you said, banged to rights by their chief political opponents in Reform. It's deeply, deeply embarrassing for them, and it would have been even worse, but they nonetheless have to pay the legal fees for Reform as a result of this decision, which I think makes the sting even more acute.
And the opinion polls in these seats, in these councils, show that Reform will pretty much sweep the board. The Tories will do reasonably, but Reform will do exceptionally well.
Yeah, and that is, of course, why the point about cynicism here is it was an authoritarian move because they knew they were going to lose these things. And whatever argument they put, you heard it in the introductory sequence there. OK, there might have been some argument for cost saving, but the democratic principle is obviously the most important one and always should be. And to those 4.6 million people, it was a farce. It was a joke. And no wonder they're in this position.
For council reforms that nobody actually particularly wants anyway. They don't have their own democratic mandate, that people in the council areas haven't particularly supported them. They decided to get rid of elections basically for their own advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. It was 30 councils from district and regional authorities down to unitary ones. So that's the principle that rather than having two financial officers, two chief executives, you simplify all this. That's the argument. But again, it comes back to the democratic principle. You know, who cares about this stuff? What I care about is, do I get a vote in May? Yes or no? I now do as a result of this, despite 15 minutes ago you saying otherwise.
One final thought on this before I go to my panel. Is it a sign of deep political weakness? Because last year they were politically strong enough to cancel the elections, and people like me complained about it, but nobody really noticed.
Yeah.
This year they're so politically weak, they can't get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is the 15th U-turn in 18 months, but also in the last couple of weeks specifically, I don't need to tell you, everyone knows this listening, they've had an absolute car crash, right? So they've lost their chief of staff, they've lost their director of communications. The MPs all know they're sitting on very, very small majorities, and so it's impossible to win them. Downing Street is in its most weak position since last week, essentially.
Since last week.
So of course, they had no choice but to do this.
So, Stephen, this is pretty awful, isn't it? That it's such an obviously shabby trick. They tried to cancel elections because they knew they'd be hammered.
So Jacob, you couldn't be more wrong. This, I'm sorry, everybody agrees that you should have economies of scale in local government. It's ridiculous to have all these parish councils, all these different levels. We agree that. So we actually talk about the numbers. This affects 672 councillors. 672. How many of them are Labour? 205. So there's no political advantage in it for Labour whatsoever. East Sussex and West Sussex are not Labour targets. We don't intend to sweep across the Sussex
No,
Downs.
but everyone will look at the swing, at the loss of Labour vote. The Labour vote's likely to collapse, even in East and West Sussex.
205 out of 672.
And if it's two when these elections are all done and dusted, as they're now happening, that's pretty embarrassing for Keir Starmer, isn't it?
No, if I may also, take exception to Mr. Cherry on this rare occasion. I have to say, this is not a U-turn. This is actually listening to what the judges are saying. This is not U-turning on policy. This is actually obeying the law. Now, that may be a novel, particular way of operating in Parliament.
Okay, John, can I bring you in?
As a lawmaker.
As a lawyer. In terms of this approach, I mean, elections have been cancelled in the past. We cancelled them for COVID, but I don't think there's any precedent for it being cancelled on such a scale before.
No, not at all. And as you rightly say, it wasn't a very democratic process to say we're going to get rid of your councils altogether. Now, sometimes there is a case for saying we only need one council instead of several councils, and there would be savings. Quite often the savings disappear because people all increase their salaries and find other ways of spending the money. But you need consent to that process. So I think it was a double blow to democracy that a lot of people already resented the fact that they were losing their local council. They weren't sure the bigger one was going to be very responsive. And then they're told they can't vote for the council they've already got. That was just disgraceful. And as you say, breaking the law and then having to humiliatingly give in like this is very unusual.
And it makes people pretty cynical about politics, doesn't it? And this is one of the problems of modern political life, is that people think we're all the same.
Yeah.
And it is pretty awful that some Conservative councillors were going along with it, and Conservative councillors...
Absolutely wrong, completely wrong. And I was very worried about that. But the leadership and the shadow cabinet was absolutely solid and rightly saw that this was an issue about democracy, and they urged those councillors not to do what they did. But obviously the Conservative Party isn't a tyranny. The leader can't instruct elected officials to act in a certain way.
And Stephen, the big winners from this are Reform, once again, aren't they? That because of these Conservative councillors and because of Labour, it looks as if the Uniparty didn't want elections and Reform did. So this government is actually building up Nigel Farage.
I can't deny that. I have to say, sometimes I'm not sure who the sleeper is in Reform, but they are incredibly lucky at the present time. Nigel Farage seems to have the golden touch. He gets cancelled by Coots and then he becomes incredibly popular. You see, everything he does, he seems to come out smelling of roses, whatever he falls into. And in this particular case, the optics look dreadful. You talk about, 4.6 million people losing their vote. About 25% of them voted. And about three-quarters of those 46 million people never vote. And yet people are going, oh, we must have the right. I used to think the only way to actually increase the turnout in elections is to make it illegal.
but that's an important point, actually. People want the right to vote, but part of the right to vote is not using it, isn't it? That's perfectly...
Exactly, we don't have mandatory voting or anything like that. But again, to return to the point, it's about the democratic principle, and it exposes the weakness of this government's position to have to U-turn again...
To obey the law.
Well, fine, yeah, but I mean, we've got video footage which you've played this evening of the Housing Secretary saying that this was necessary action. The government was very pleased to do it. Yeah. And then 1 hour and 40 minutes after Keir Starmer says no more U-turns in the radio broadcast this afternoon, he does it again.
But then why didn't they change the law? If they knew what they were doing, they could have brought a changed law to Parliament before they did all this.
They wouldn't have got it through Parliament, I don't think. I don't think their own MPs. Their own MPs are now ashamed of them, I think. Anyway, a Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government spokesman said, following legal advice, the government, that is His Majesty's government, has withdrawn its original decision to postpone 30 local elections in May. Providing certainty to councils about their local elections is now the most crucial thing, and all local elections will now go ahead in May 2026. They are brilliant, the people who write these messages for us. I'm very grateful.
Do they know how long it takes to choose a council candidate?
Coming up in just a moment, Labour is mired in sleaze, further sleaze, as the group bankrolling Keir Starmer's leadership is accused of orchestrating a smear campaign against journalists investigating its funding. Is Labour showing its proclivity for totalitarian politics and ruling by decree?
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Football Safety app is obviously does exactly what it says on the tin. You're going to a football match, and you got to remember football doesn't start when you're actually in the stadium. It starts when you leave your house and you're going to a game. So you can report in stuff, whether you're on a train, whether you're travelling, whether you're walking to a stadium, anything that's happening in and around you. We all know that sometimes it can get a bit rowdy on the trains. I've been there before, stuck on the train before, and sometimes you struggle to report it. And this is a way of reporting what's going on and reporting it to police.
And Emile, have you ever been a victim of all of this?
Well, I've obviously had racial abuse at stadiums while playing, etc.
You know, you know what's sad? The fact that you said obviously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just awful that it's obviously.
The interesting thing with that is I made my debut at 17. And we know what's going on, we see it, I've had it, and by the time I was finished, when I was playing, I was thinking, by the time I finish playing, it will change. It probably hasn't, it's probably just morphed into something else. We have the ability to get a hold of anyone, any time in our hands, with our mobile phones, with social media, with the social media companies. So it's just morphed into something else where we get a lot of abuse. We see it with the lads playing in the missing penalties, and then suddenly they're getting abused, etc. But that's still happening in the stadium, and it's not just racial abuse, it's bullying, it's sexual harassment, it's all sorts of harassment.
And all these things would qualify to be reported
in the app. You basically just report, you can just click a button and it's instant.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, we've been talking about cancelled elections, and the mailbogs have come steaming in. Mike says we have a government in total disarray, spinning around in circles, breaking the law and stumbling from one disaster to another and trying to silence free speech. Keir Starmer does not have any credibility left at all, but he clings on against the interests of the nation. Labour is unfit to govern. And Dave says Starmer, the ex-head of Director of Public Prosecutions, needed advice to tell him it was illegal to ban elections. Who knew? That's the problem with these lefty lawyers. They think the law is always on their side, even when it isn't. But that leads me nicely on to when Sir Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He prosecuted about 30 journalists for doing their job. All but one was acquitted by juries he now wants to abolish. Now, his campaign group, Labour Together, under the leadership of his ally and Cabinet Office Minister promoted by Starmer, Josh Simons, has been found to have hired an American firm to dig up dirt on 2 British journalists to try to discredit their expose of funding concerns around the group. This is the stuff of totalitarian states, which coincided by efforts to rule by decree, an aim of giving ministers the ability to introduce new laws restricting social media scrolling and VPNs without the need for primary legislation or proper parliamentary scrutiny in the name of protecting children. Is this pattern of behaviour proving Labour's propensity to rule by decree and a government looking increasingly undemocratic and totalitarian? Well, my panel is still with me, Lord Redwood and Stephen Pound. Stephen, both of these things seem to me to be deeply concerning. We have good reason for making legislation complicated, is that our history shows that rushed law is bad law, and the classic example, dangerous dogs. And that Starmer, the prosecution of all those journalists, where he lost again and again, and this Labour Together thing, getting some dodgy American company to dig up dirt on Sunday Times journalists, looking into the religious background of one of the journalists when Labour has problems with anti-Semitism. It's deeply distasteful at the least. It's also sinister at the worst.
To be honest, there's a stench about this that I'm not happy with. Gabriel Pogren is a very, very well-respected journalist. He's written a superb book. He's written extremely good books, particularly about the previous leadership of the Labour Party and the present one. To actually employ ethos and in defence of Labour First, they say they didn't actually set that out as the brief, but that was the data that they got back from it. To actually mention his religious or his ethnicity, that's I'm sorry, that's playing the man, not the ball. It's wrong. And so I can't defend this, as much as I'd like to.
And what were they thinking of? And why were they even trying to do this rather than accepting that they'd made what they claimed was an administrative error in declaring donations?
Well, what were they saying? Yeah, I mean, there's fairly significant sums, over £300,000. But what they were doing was that they asked a simple question, where's this person coming from? Because it's in many ways, it's the greatest tribute to Gabriel Pogren you could ever get. He's an extremely well-respected Sunday Times journalist. He's written at least 2 excellent books, probably more. And so to actually say, we're that worried about him, we want to know where he's coming from, what's his motive, what drives him, that is a compliment to him. But it's not the way we should do politics.
Well, I mean, I'm agreeing with Stephen. John, is there any defence of Labour? Did we ever do this sort of thing? Is there a history of Conservative governments or even oppositions deciding to dig up dirt on journalists?
Well, I hope not. I mean, individuals might have done that, but certainly not authorised by the Prime Minister and the government. I mean, it is really quite scary. In a free society, if you're a minister in particular, you have to accept there's going to be a lot of noise and journalists are going to write things you don't like. And if they write something that's completely wrong, then you've obviously got a law of libel and you can go for it. But you've got to accept the rough with the smooth because you are in power and it's quite reasonable that people try and find out how true you are and what's going on. So I do find it very scary.
And Keir Starmer, once again, has to face the music, doesn't he? That he's trying to push it off onto other people. But Josh Simons was running this organisation. It was this organisation that promoted Sir Keir. And Josh Simons then got promoted to a senior role in the Cabinet Office.
I'm afraid it's Sir Keir's organisation. It was for him and of him. And it is up to him to supervise it and set its tone. He wouldn't obviously investigate every transaction. But if you have an organisation that is helping you, surely you go and see them regularly to make sure they know what your principles are. And his principles should have included allowing journalists reasonable access and not thinking you can boss them around.
And, Stephen, it's an issue of trust, isn't it? Which leads on to the second point about fast-tracking legislation on the internet and social media. That I don't trust this government to do that properly because it's broken trust. It's broken trust on cancelling elections. It's broken trust on investigating journalists and trying to damage journalists. Why should I now trust it to fast-track legislation?
Well, because in this particular case, they're in the right. But I have to say, to try to dig up dirt, as you put it, on a respected journalist, it's completely facile anyway, because you're not going to get anywhere at the end. And I don't know who it was who said the relationship between the press and politicians is a relationship between a dog and a lamppost. We expect, it's like sailors complaining about the sea.
We are the lamppost, to clarify.
Well,
yes, and we accept that.
Yeah, no, we can understand.
But they didn't accept it.
No, they didn't, which is why, I will very often die in the last ditch to save the party I love. But I have to say, sometimes I do draw the line. But look, on the other question, this business about the internet and about what children being driven to suicide by some of them, it's got to be done. It's got to be done quickly. It's got to be done urgently. This is not comparable to the Dangerous Dogs Act, govern in haste, repent at leisure. This is a particular one where I think the House is united. We all recognise we've now got a test case in Australia. We've got other countries are doing it. And I think for the sake of our children and the weak people in it, we've got to act.
I'm afraid for the sake of our children is one of those arguments that is used when people don't have a proper argument to make, because it's like saying security, that you use it as a catch-all for doing something that you're failing to think through properly. and all government legislation needs rigour, otherwise it ends up being poorly drafted.
Yes, you're right. It's got to be thought through and tested, and this is an occasion when parliamentary debate and proper consultation is necessary. And of course, there's nothing stopping adults, parents, grandparents and schools taking measures already because they know rather more than legislators do about the individual circumstances of those individual children. And I hope the national debate will trigger more thinking in schools and around the family tables because quite a lot of good parents like yourself know how to do this, and they know there are controls that you can use.
I think this is very important, and I'd point out to viewers that I'm not the most technologically sophisticated man in England, but on my iPhone I can control what my children can see by age range and indeed the hours on which they can use their telephones. If I can do it, any parent can do it. Anyway, we've had a right of reply from Labour Together, from Alison Phillips, who's the now head of it, who said the group was ready to support the Public Relations and Communications Association and other relevant governance bodies with its review of this issue. Well, that's extremely helpful. And Josh Simons, now the Labour MP for Macclesfield in Greater Manchester, said APCO had strayed beyond its brief. He said, "I was surprised and shocked to read the report extended beyond the contract by including unnecessary information on Gabriel Pogrund. I asked for this information to be removed before passing the report to GCHQ."
Why?
I mean, that is even more extraordinary that he decided to pass the report on to the Secret Services. Getting Secret Services investigating journalists is what Iran does. And so his statement makes it worse, not better, but I'll continue with it. No other British journalists were investigated in any document I or Labour Together ever received. He said he welcomed the investigation launched last week by the Public Relations and Communications Association. This is very serious, Mr Simons. You need to consider your position. Anyway, in a moment, small boat migrants who had their telephones seized on arrival have now been awarded thousands in compensation after lefty judges, ruled the policy unlawful just weeks after the Home Secretary announced powers to do so. When will the government put border control ahead of these lefty judges?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, and welcome to your winter sun forecast from the Met Office. If you're looking to head towards the Mediterranean over the next few days, it will be sunny in places, but there is still some persistent rain at times. The Canaries do have the best of the sunshine, but Portugal and northern Spain do cling on to a lot of this rain. Italy at the moment does see a lot of that sunshine, but out towards Greece and Turkey, we do have this persistent rain with some thunderstorms in the mix as well. Temperatures-wise, especially across Tenerife, we will see those temperatures get up towards those low.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. During the next 24 hours, showers will clear, but they'll leave in their wake icy patches for northern and eastern parts of the UK, where it'll also be windy. With that wind coming from the north, it's bringing cold air. So once showers move through, there will be some tricky conditions first thing Tuesday. Slippery surfaces out there on roads and pavements. Having said that, we'll also see some sleet and snow showers across north of Scotland into the east and southeast of Scotland and eastern England overnight. Mostly any snow accumulations over hills, but patchy small amounts at lower levels, and the main hazard, of course, first thing Tuesday will be ice, because it's going to be a cold start out there, but a bright start for many, having seen the showers clear earlier in the night and widespread clear skies develop. Blue skies are expected first thing across many parts of the UK, especially central parts of England into Wales, Northern Ireland, central and western Scotland, cloud-free skies, but a chill in the air. Then we've got further sleet and snow showers coming into the northeast of Scotland, but these are easing through the day. Eastern England, a blustery start with some very strong winds first thing. They tend to moderate by the time we get to the afternoon. And then for many, it's just a dry and bright day. But it will turn cloudy towards the southwest later on. 7 Celsius here, 4 or 5 further north and east. When you factor in the strong wind, it's going to feel more like 0 or 1 degree. Now, the cloudier skies in the southwest will bring an area of rain in overnight, and that's going to spill into Northern Ireland, parts of South Wales and the southern part of England by Wednesday afternoon. Some heavy rain eventually, and that's going to turn to snow over the hills in the south, I think, on Wednesday night into Thursday. Thursday turns drier with plenty of sunshine for many.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's illegal migrant madness continues as it's revealed that small boat migrants who had their telephones seized on arrival in Britain have been awarded thousands of pounds in compensation after judges ruled the policy breached their human rights. So far, 32 asylum seekers has received more than £210,000 in payouts, an average of over £6,500 each, with many more claims pending. The ruling comes despite the Home Secretary announcing new powers to seize telephones only last month.
Seizing mobile phones to gather vital intelligence to disrupt people smugglers. Those who plan small boat crossings face up to 5 years behind bars.
When will His Majesty's government stop allowing the courts to subvert its will and put the British people above illegal migrants? Well, my panel, I'm glad to say, is still with me, Lord Redwood and Stephen Pound. John, £6,500 when you've come here illegally, because at that point it was illegal to come in on a small boat. The Labour Party changed the law. Seems utterly disproportionate. What can the judges be thinking about?
Well, it's completely outrageous, and the judges are way out of contact with normal people who think it's absurd. I mean, I was very much in favour of the policy of taking the phones of people who come here illegally. If they arrive, they won't tell you who they are and show their normal documents. They won't tell you who they paid for the boat trip. They won't tell you who was driving the boat. And so, by all means, take the phone and try and get the information, because we're meant to be smashing the gangs or stopping the small boats under the two governments we recently had, and we haven't done either of those things. So I think the government should either appeal this or unusually for me, I would even accept retrospective legislation. I think the government should say, courts got this wrong. The public wants this properly prosecuted, and we shouldn't pay a penny to people.
Shouldn't pay any money out to
no,
people who've come
no
here?
money at all. They should be very lucky to get their phones back, because they came here illegally. They were probably involved in money laundering, paying big sums to people who aren't paying any tax and who are doing evil deeds. We shouldn't be encouraging that.
And, Stephen, isn't this quite important? Because we think of the people coming here as being desperate migrants. Actually, they have had to pay a lot of money to get here. They've got expensive mobile telephones. They're not the absolutely destitute. They're motivated and they're ambitious people. I'm not saying they're fundamentally bad people, but they're not the weakest in society who need our help. They're people who are playing a system, and this is a further play on the system at the cost of the taxpayer.
Well, what used to really get my goat when I was in Parliament, people would come to my surgery and talk with many. I dealt with thousands of asylum cases, and it wasn't some lonely housewife in Afghanistan. It was somebody who used to say, "I've paid the agent." Who used to say, "How did you come in?" Through an agent. It's usually middle-class people who are farmers, who've got money, who can actually pay to come, and you can afford to pay more for an iPhone than I could in a month of Sundays. I mean, some of these. But look, we actually need to have these phones to find out what is going on, and the fact that they've got the iPhones in the first, or these very expensive phones, is indicative. And I think you've put a very important point there, if I may say. The fact is that the people who are coming, it's not giving you're poor, you're weak, you're hungry, you're starving people. These are people who've actually managed to get together the money to pay a huge amount of money to pay. And some of the people, the recent cases of Vietnamese people who are paying a lot of money, which they can then pay back. £20,000 payback within 2 years.
And there's something wrong with these judges, isn't there? That one of the criticisms is that they were put under pressure by immigration officials to give their PINs so that their telephones could be accessed. Well, of course we want to access the telephones of people who come here illegally to find out, as John was saying, who on earth they are.
Well, when you look at Mette Frederiksen in Denmark, the very popular Prime Minister there, she was talking about taking people's earrings and their wedding rings and so they could pay for their accommodation. I thought we were doing we had quite a sensible, liberal middle ground here. And the idea that some judge can say, no, the fact that we've taken this person's phone, we must not only give it back, but it was compensate them for it.
£6,500.
I mean, is that for, the psychological hurt and the upset to the post-traumatic stress disorder?
OK. All right.
Let's agree, no more lefty judges.
All right, but this is a sigh of frustration. How is this happening in our country? Why has this madness taken hold? It's partly the Human Rights Act. But what makes a judge? One used to think of judges being sensible, learned people. This judge must be a grade 1 idiot.
Well, it's extremely worrying because they are so out of touch where everybody else is, and they are impeding the enforcement of perfectly reasonable laws. And this business about, oh, well, there's no blame on the person coming in because they weren't the criminal was the organiser of the boat. Yes, but on the other hand, if you have a good aim but you start paying criminals, you are conniving at criminal activity, you are assisting it, you're financing it.
And that's true in the ordinary law, isn't it?
I agree, but surely the answer is perfectly simple. You take the phone on arrival, you download all the data you want, and then you give it back to them. I don't see what's the problem with that.
What even better is you say, tell me what I need to know, otherwise I need your phone, because if these
otherwise
people
you don't get it
would
back.
cooperate with the authorities.
I don't
but
know.
We didn't even interview a lot of these people when they arrived. We didn't even arrest the boat driver, and they could see who was driving the boat when they picked them up. They didn't arrest them and prosecute them. They were clearly part of the gang.
Was this a single judge sitting, or was it a tribunal?
No, I don't.
Because I know the government are appealing it, and the government have got to appeal it. There's no question at all.
And you would agree with John, if necessary, retrospective legislation. This just can't go ahead. £6,500.
I'm squeamish about.
Yeah, so am I. It's not what we normally do.
This is an outrage.
But this is just crazy stuff, isn't it?
Well, it makes a complete nonsense of everything that we're trying to do.
For those of us who want to leave the European Convention on Human Rights and repeal the Human Rights Act, once again,
this is British law, not European law.
Well, it's under the Human Rights Act, which incorporates European law. It strengthens the arm of those of us who want to pull out and just have proper British law and not allow our law to be influenced by these continental concepts of rights, which don't fit in with a common law system.
I know. We've discussed this before. The idea that in British you can do what's in the law. You can only do what you can do something as long as it's not against the law. Whereas in Europe, the Napoleonic law is the other way around. But look, in America, you have elected judges. So I would be unhappy about coming up before a judge who I'd known was say, Reform, Conservative or Labour. I think in many ways
we treat you very fairly. But
I wouldn't mind being in front of you, my lord, but sorry, my lord.
My lad.
I'm not that sort of lord.
No, indeed. Anyway, we have a statement from the Home Office. A Home Office spokesman said the compensation is to be paid as a result of the previous government's policy.
That's all right, then.
We have introduced tougher legislation in the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Act, which allows asylum seekers' mobile telephones to be legally seized when they arrive in the United Kingdom. There we go. In a moment.
In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
The Trump administration may give refugee status to a man who burned a Quran in London if he loses the appeal in the High Court later this week. Is President Trump acting on principle or simply mobbing up His Majesty's government? Anyway, thank you.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What we're going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
The Trump administration is reportedly considering offering refuge to a man who burned a Quran outside the Turkish consulate in London if he loses the DPP's High Court appeal this week. Hamit Coskun successfully overturned a public order conviction at an earlier hearing, saying he may seek asylum in the United States, claiming free speech in Britain is under threat. His case has led to national debate over blasphemy laws, protest and the limits of expression. The state of free speech in Britain has strained relations between Washington and the socialist government.
I think he's going to censor what I said because I say only good things. Will you please uncensor my site?
Yeah, we're not censoring anyone.
Is this a principled move to defend Britain's liberties, or is the Trump administration simply teasing Keir Starmer? Well, I'm joined now by a friend of the programme, the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, thank you for coming in.
Great to be here.
I mean, I do sometimes think Donald Trump's just enjoying himself, and this is a fantastic wind-up to say we'll give asylum to...
Definitely. I mean, this is a statement, but it's also symbolic, and I think he's enjoying it. And he is winding up the prime minister for good reason, by the way. But I don't think we could take 1,000 political asylum people every month, which is the number that are being arrested for thought crimes. So this one is just symbolic.
Is a one-off. But is Donald Trump as keen on free speech as all that? He doesn't seem to be when it's critical of him.
Yeah, it's kind of in some ways hypocritical in the sense that he doesn't like libel, he doesn't like things that are untrue, he doesn't, and he punches back, and that's just the nature of him, right? So I think with the BBC is probably the most classic example where if he thinks he's been wronged and it's not free speech, it's a hyper activism press, then he'll fight back.
But Nigel Nelson was on earlier saying he's banned PA from White House events because they won't call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico. They just won't do what he's told them to do. That's quite anti-free speech, isn't it?
There's a certain element of that. Now, again, I think he's toying with a lot of these reporters, and he still has the sort of activist left in the press room. and he still entertains CNN and the major networks. But he does, sort of draw the line once in a while. And I think in many ways that's refreshing, even if he goes overboard, which is classic President Trump, going overboard. He pushes the limits.
And you have the great protection of the First Amendment, so that even if the president isn't particularly keen on free speech and doesn't like being criticised, it eventually comes to the American courts, and they're quite robust. Whereas here, our free speech has been defended by it being just something accepted within the Constitution. And there's absolute free speech in Parliament, specific law to give that, and law to protect the reporting of speech in Parliament. But once you get outside, our public order laws and so on can trip you up.
Right.
As a friendly observer of the UK, how do you think we deal with this? What would you advise us to do?
Well, I mean, it's always better to have a written constitution, I would argue.
So?
And the First Amendment is the First Amendment. I mean, it is clearly the most important of the amendments. That's why they made it the first. But, there's 1,000 years of precedent and statutes in the United Kingdom, and our Constitution was based on English law and the 1,000 years of precedent.
And an attempt to perfect the British Constitution. But the thing that worries me about the US Constitution is the alternative compromise you have to make. The compromise we make is that Parliament can change the law too easily. The compromise you take is that ultimately the unelected judges decide what the law means.
And it's difficult to change, to add amendments to the Constitution. Yeah, I mean, really difficult.
Really difficult. There hasn't been one in 20 years or something. And
that's right.
And the last one was technical.
Yeah, and so, but you bring up a really good point, Jacob, in that it's really difficult for the judges to, they can't change the Constitution. But if you had an activist court, which we've had in recent decades, right now we have very much a constitutionalist or an originalist court.
Dare I say, you have a court that you and I like
That's
nowadays.
Right. Yes, I wasn't going to say conservative, but I will. So,
but that's actually not a good thing.
No, because think about it. If we lose a few elections and they stack the court, or either stack the court or win a few elections and do it fairly, you could have a left-leaning activist court. And next thing you know, we'll have UK-style censorship in California, in New York, probably in Illinois, all the progressive blue states, Minnesota for sure. And so, we're only a few bad elections away from a left-leaning activist court. And that
so
worries me.
You have a sort of complication there, don't you, that it's either the judges decide or the democracy decides, either of which can swing back, because you have had very left-wing courts, you've now got a right-wing court, we've had right-wing parliaments, and we've now got a left-wing parliament. And that's where you want constitutional norms to apply, that people accept certain things. And perhaps what worries me most about the UK at the moment is that the current government doesn't accept the constitutional norms and is fundamentally hostile to freedom of speech, hence investigations into journalism, Keir Starmer's historic prosecution of lots of journalists, and so on.
That's right. And look, I mean, right now, things are good in America, and we are free speech absolutists, and that's not because of the administration or the Congress. That's because of the First Amendment. However, it was only 5 years ago that the Biden administration had a disinformation czar, and in the Department of Homeland Security, which is just Orwellian thought police. And guess where she is now? At the UK Center for Information Resilience. After she was run out of America. So this is not a good sign for the UK right now. I'm glad that there was pushback enough against that role. It lasted 2 months.
All right, well, we've got to go to the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, there's going to be lots of free speech on your programme this evening, but I hope no Quran burning. That might get you into a little trouble with Ofcom.
Oh, yeah, no, I think the lawyers had a thing or two to say about that. Of course, not that I would want to anyway. Anyway, happy Monday to you, Jacob. Loads on tonight. We are going to be, we smashed a gang. We've yet again smashed an illegal migrant gang, so we're going to be revealing all of that to you. I'm also, of course, going to be talking about whether or not it's OK to be shot on sight if you're caught carrying a knife. And we are going to get elections. Yes, fantastic. That's 1-0 to reform versus Starmer's dictatorship. All that more coming your way.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. During the next 24 hours, showers will clear, but they'll leave in their wake icy patches for northern and eastern parts of the UK, where it'll also be windy. With that wind coming from the north, it's bringing cold air. So once showers move through, there will be some tricky conditions first thing Tuesday. Slippery surfaces out there on roads and pavements. Having said that, we'll also see some sleet and snow showers across north of Scotland into the east and southeast of Scotland and eastern England overnight. Mostly any snow accumulations over hills, but patchy small amounts at lower levels, and the main hazard, of course, first thing Tuesday will be ice, because it's going to be a cold start out there, but a bright start for many, having seen the showers clear earlier in the night and widespread clear skies develop. Blue skies are expected first thing across many parts of the UK, especially central parts of England into Wales, Northern Ireland, central and western Scotland, cloud-free skies, but a chill in the air. Then we've got further sleet and snow showers coming into the northeast of Scotland, but these are easing through the day. Eastern England, a blustery start with some very strong winds first thing. They tend to moderate by the time we get to the afternoon, and then for many it's just a dry and bright day. But it will turn cloudy towards the southwest later on. 7 Celsius here, 4 or 5 further north and east. When you factor in the strong wind, it's going to feel more like 0 or 1 degree. Now, the cloudier skies in the southwest will bring an area of rain in overnight, and that's going to spill into Northern Ireland, parts of South Wales and the southern part of England by Wednesday afternoon. Some heavy rain eventually, and that's going to turn to snow over the hills in the south, I think, on Wednesday night into Thursday. Thursday turns drier with plenty of sunshine for many.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of 0 visibility. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Make sure you don't miss the chance to grab an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. And that's not all. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for 2 to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, or even Sri Lanka. There's just 2 weeks left to enter. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us.